This video explains how to split up incandescent strings into multiple strings. Why do you need to do this? Well, in some of our holiday coral designs, we do not use exactly 100 bulbs. We may use 35 or 40 or 45, and you may find it more efficient to split a 100 count string, such as this, into a 50 or a 50. Now, lights do vary. We have lights that go from 200 count. We have, in this case, 50 count. They all slightly differ. Some may allow splitting and some may not. These lights do not allow for splitting. Others may allow for it. We'll show you how to determine that. Now, first, before we start here, be aware that you are working with 120 volts, which could be lethal. When you are working with them lights, do not have them plugged up. Don't cut them with the wires plugged in. You should have them turned off. We'll talk a little bit about safety and as it relates to cutting the wires and how the voltages work. Now, in here I've drawn a diagram and we have a simple set of lights. Now, Christmas lights are very simple. What we have is we have a plug. We have a plug like this. In the end, there's a fuse to prevent it from shorting out. This goes down 2 wires, as you can see here. And that goes on to a bulb. And you can see that there's a wire that continues on. See how it does not connect in with the other existing wires? It's just a return. So the power goes down each bulb to each one. Now, how does 120 volts work on Christmas lights? Well, the bulbs actually are about 2 volts. If you take the number of Christmas lights, which in this particular case is 50 lights, and you multiply that across their voltage, which may be, let's say, 2 or 2.1 volts, then you come out with 120 volts total. Now, why is it not half that? Because you have 100 count? It's because there are, again, 2 strings of 50 counts in a 100 count light string. In almost all cases that applies. Okay, so in this particular case I have, and you can see here's the last bulb in the string, and you can see that it just loops around and continues on. So that is where it loops back around. Now, you can cut up your bulbs so that you end up with no continuation. You may not need a plug that goes on to another set of lights, or you can make a 50 count string out of a 100 count that is not continuing on, or is continuing on. Okay, we'll talk about that. So, let's start off with just a simple set of 100 count strings. Now, this one's real easy. They've even actually got them split up in the middle here. Now, what you'll see here is they've got them wrapped up. There are, in fact, 50 bulbs on one side and 50 bulbs on the other, or more or less. Some strings actually don't have the real number they list. So if I unravel these a little bit here, what we're going to see here is that you're going to notice in most places there are 3 wires. But in one spot in the middle here, we actually just have 2 wires. Now, what are those? One of those is a wire that continues down the string that provides power to the rest of the string onto the very end plug. And so we can choose to leave those or not leave those. Now, in the simplest possible splitting, you simply just locate where you have the string. So for example, I'll break this apart a little bit more. You can see you have 3. So if I break this apart a little bit more, you can see you have the continuous run, bulb to bulb, and then you have 2 wires that carry along. One of those is this return wire, and one of them is a wire that comes off, and I'll just draw it up here, and it continues on also. Now, that provides power to the next string's plug. If we want to simply just split them in 2, all we have to do is go in here, find the middle. Again, that's where we're going to have the 2 wires. So I can see that I have 2 wires here. Now, I'm going to first start off by showing you how we can split it so that we can keep the female plug on here. And we're going to need some extra parts to make that happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to cut this right down here. So right where there's 2 wires, not where there's 3 wires. So now you can see we have 2 wires coming off. Now, this is the end that does have the male plug. So I'm going to leave all that alone. I'm just going to take these wires and I am going to strip them off so we get a little bit of copper there. Now, the other thing you'll want to get is a SB22 cord. This one has a male plug. Now, these are commonly used in the Christmas lighting world, and all they are is simply a plug. Let me just take this one apart so you can see this and show you how I assemble it. So I'm just going to start off by nipping the ends to create a separation because those fit inside the little plug at the end. So I'm just going to put them in there. The ridge side with the fat connector, the neutral. I put them in there, lay them down flat. I take this connector, look for this end with a notch, and put that at the back. And we just take our dikes here, slide it on, voila, plug them in. Now, this is really useful. Now, in this particular case, we do need a female because we're going to be extending a female. So let me go ahead and create a female real quick. Okay, so we're going to be extending this string. Now, this is useful because you may want to go further distance before you split it out again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm also going to just split this in. So we may want to jump a gap between these strings, or if we were doing the male end, we may want to put an extra leader on it, so it's a little bit longer. Now, I'm just going to separate these. I'm going to use something called shrink wrap tubing. Shrink wrap tubing is available in electronic stores or online. It's just a shrinkable tubing. We're just going to take a small section of this, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Cut it off. I'm going to slide it over this wire. This is just going to provide some protection for the wires after we solder them. So now we have 2 bare wires at the end of this string, and we're going to make the female plug at this end. I'll take some solder. And this is good old-fashioned lead and tin solder, 6040, with rosin core in there to make it spread really nice and easy. And I put some on here. This is just called tinning. This just helps it so you can just touch the two together once you get this solder on there. It doesn't really matter, well, technically matters, but it doesn't really matter which one you put on which. So I'm just going to put that on there, touch that, and then touch that. Okay, so we've soldered them on there. I'm going to slide this shrink wrap tubing back over there. And I'm just going to take my blowtorch here and just tight that up. Now, does it have to be waterproof? No. Keep in mind that on the back of these plugs, each one of these, the water can get in there and there's voltage in there. Now, is it dangerous? Not so much, because again, the voltage is being dropped as it goes across all the lights. So if you just stuck your finger in one, the most you're going to get is 2 volts. All right, so just to show you that it works, we're going to take this string of lights here. We're going to plug it up, and you can see that it all lights up. Now, what I'm also going to do to show you that this string here is also still hooked up, so what I'm going to do is just plug this string into that string, and you can see now I've reconnected and created again a 100 count string. So let's look at the remaining pair, because this half has a female on it. So let's undo this. Now this has a female. Now you could just leave it. You could actually, if you wanted, let's say, another male pair, you could just cut off this wire and this one right here, this lead right here, and then go to the other end down here and cut off the extra one down here. And we'll go ahead and do that actually. Now, you could go through the whole trouble of actually unwinding the wire. So you can go through and you can take out this wire. If you didn't want the extra weight, or maybe you wanted to reuse this wire, you could go through and undo it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here. You can see now at the end, the wires come to the end. We're right here at the end of the bulb string. I'm just going to take and trim this off at the base. Now, if you think, okay, well that must be dangerous. Remember, we're only looking at 2 volts there. So even if you touch it, you're fine. Not that I recommend you usually touch bare wires. Now, we could go through and we could undo this whole string and undo it all the way through. I'm just going to fast forward to the end down here, and we're going to unwind these lights at the end. Now, what we're making here again is just one male plug. So we're going to actually cut off this female plug and make a male one. Now, you may want to save this female plug because you might use it later. Now, what you'll notice at this end, again, this is really just another version of these plugs that we already talked about. It's like this was a male plug. Imagine you have a male plug here. You've got the one line. See how it comes in there? And it goes on to the remainder of the lights. And you also notice that you have one wire that's hooked up directly to the first light in the string, and then he has the jumps to the next one. Now, if you were to trace the wire that we were cutting out in here, so if we go back here and we look at this wire at this end of the string, that wire is this wire right here. It's the one that's connected to the first bulb but doesn't connect onto the rest. So if I take this and I just cut it out, there you go. Now, again, you could go through, you could unwind this and save the wire and then make something out of it. Like, for example, let's say you wanted to extend the length of your bulb. You could take that wire like this and then solder it on and create longer lengths of wire. Now, in this case, we're going to say, well, we wanted 2 male plugs. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off a little bit so we save the end of this. So in that particular case, you would want to have a length of cable that was appropriate. So we might have more than just this, let's say, 1 foot length. And that's the great thing about making these cables yourself, or splitting these up. You can make them any length you want. So I'm just going to, again, strip it off. Remember, this is the end we cut the female off of. And I'm just going to come back and I'm going to wind this around there so it's a little cleaner. Oops, there we go. Okay, there we go. Wrap those up and just like that. And get a little bit more of our shrink wrap. And always remember to put that on before you solder. And we take our solder. And our solder. And I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on this one. And again, oops, solder our cables there together. We're just going to touch them on there real quick. And it's always the tricky part. Okay, so we got those on there. You can see there's a good connection there. Slide this back over there. Take my torch. Again, there's not a need to make sure that's 100% waterproof. You know, I've even used hot glue on those. You can see that now we have a string, and you can see the last bulb in the string does not have. I'll even touch this wire, this bare wire down here, and you can see that it does not shock me. And also the wire right here that's coming out, you can see that it does not shock you because it's not the full length. All right, so now we have a set of lights that is split up. And again, we could have gone through and removed this wire if we didn't want that in there, wanted to reduce the weight. All right, I hope that helps. Now again, this is a generic tutorial that does not apply to every single light. Some kinds of lights, such as 200 counts or icicle lights or smaller lights, such as these 50 count, they're already broken down. There is no breaking these down into 25s, for example. So if you're buying your lights, you might want to look into that. That gives you more versatility in the way you can wire them. We hope this has been helpful and you enjoy your holiday core product.